Well, hello and welcome to Association Transformation. We're down a man today. I am on my own, and some of the listeners may be happy about that, and that's okay. But Andrew is homesick. We miss him. We wish him well, and we're going to tackle a big topic that I don't know if he would truly appreciate. I come from the trade association space, and I know here in the U.S. this topic is one that is people are feeling. There's a lot of talk about it, not a lot of solutions. But let me go ahead and introduce my guests. In absence of Andrew, there may be a little less banter, but I'll try to be nice to our guests instead of how I would otherwise treat Andrew. So we'll start with Rob Panarkevich. Hello, sir. How are you? CEO of Selected Independent Funeral Homes.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Leanne Shep, SVP at the American Bankers Association. Good morning.
Good morning.
I used to say good morning because we're all in the same time zone.
We are.
A rare treat for me. But when we talk about member consolidation, some people may think we're talking about the membership. And I think when I say that, I'm talking about the members' companies themselves and how they are closing, how they are being bought out, how they are consolidating in one way or another in the marketplace, and how that then affects our member roles and oftentimes how we charge dues in a trade association space, which is often on locations or employees or revenue and earnings. So there's different ways to cut this up, but the reality is a lot of industries are contracting. There are just fewer total options. And maybe that's not the case in every industry, but Rob, what's going on in the funeral home space?
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversations today. Yeah, I mean, we're within a profession that goes back centuries. And while 80% of the funeral homes in North America are still independently owned and operated, typically by a family, there's been tremendous acquisition activity, some merger activities, a larger company buying up a smaller firm, within their communities. But we're seeing tremendous growth in private equity getting involved in purchase of funeral homes, of large funeral homes. And they're not buying it to spruce it up and sell it. They're buying it, they're hanging on to it, they're running them and, trying to bring efficiencies into the mix and gain profits, which, we certainly understand. But it's hurting an organization like ours, of course, where our membership requirements start with independent. And
it's in the name.
It's in the name. It's kind of in the DNA. So, yeah. So it's been a challenge. I've been here for about 17 years, but back in the 90s, there was a large, 10-year time frame where corporate funeral homes were gobbling up independents, and there was a lot of money being thrown around. And that was the first time this organization got hit pretty hard. Lost several hundred of firms. And so I would say right before the pandemic kicked in, late 2019 is when all of a sudden we started seeing acquisitions start ramping up again, and it hasn't stopped. We've seen a pretty large number of acquisitions from private equity and corporate over the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, you and I've had the opportunity to work together before, and the funeral home industry is one that's so unique and so maybe unknown to so many people that I think the commonalities, just being a business,
right,
are make it easy and kind of intriguing at the same time. Yeah. Leanne, what's going on in the banker space? And just to confirm, your membership you're a 501c6.
Yes.
So it's the bank who is the member versus the banker.
Correct. It is the banks. Banking industry has been consolidating for years, many years. At its peak, we were losing a bank a day.
Wow.
Day. We are, for a while, it dipped, obviously, around the pandemic. Right now, it hovers. Historically, it's been running at 3 to 4% of the industry every year goes away.
Okay.
Those are just banks acquiring other banks, a little bit lately of credit unions acquiring banks, but for the most part, it's just intrabank consolidation. But it's been consistent, and there are a couple of slow years, and then it picks up again. So
Yeah.
we see it, it's a constant thing for banking.
Yeah, and you guys have no member limitations. You can be a bank of any size, of any ownership model.
There are some guidelines, but any size, yes. We represent banks of all sizes, charter types, things like that across the whole industry, yes.
Is that for either of your industries, is there an international component where, and maybe this for Leanne, are you only allowed to be a member if you're owned domestically?
Yes, for us, we have affiliates, and there are other areas where international banks can be members of, not ABA bank members, but different types of membership.
Yeah. You know, I wonder, I always come to clients, and the first question is, how do you measure success? What's the goal here? And you know, in a certain way, you could be increasing your market share through the consolidation by representing, you know, fewer members, but they're larger members, and then there are fewer in total versus your member roles, your member head count. And I wonder if you all, especially at the ABA, have had that conversation. What's membership success? How do you define being the voice of this sector?
We do. We have that conversation every day. To market share, yes. If as I track it, historically more non-members went away than members, so your market share actually increases a little bit just by itself organically. But yes, we do struggle to represent the whole industry. Our membership does mirror the industry itself in terms of distribution by asset size and things like that. You tend to see the smaller banks going away. For many years, that was the majority of the mergers that occurred. Over the years lately, we've seen some much larger mergers. We've all saw SunTrust, you know, Truist, and that does have an impact on us. But we do maintain a great market share, and we do truly work to involve ourselves in the activities of all banks, so that when these mergers occur, we're there for all of them.
I mean, there has to be growth somewhere. What about all the little online banks, the little, you know, with no brick and mortar? Are they allowed to be members? Is that a growth area for you guys?
It has to be we have a number of guidelines about who can be a member, but there are a couple of online banks that are members that have no actual brick and mortars, but not too many of them are FDIC insured, things like that.
Sure.
So.
Okay. And you know, Rob, you have much more restriction on your membership, given the independent piece of this. Does the focus then become kind of changing the membership business model, or to trying to get those independents that you don't already have? I mean, you know,
yeah, I mean, our focus is limited. Our focus is limited because of the independent aspect, but it's also limited because we're one of those groups that we're what I've always referred to as more of a mastermind type organization. We've always been we've always represented less than, you know, 10% of the entire profession on purpose. This is a group where, you know, when you join, the expectation is that you will not only seek to gain, but to give, right? So this is one of those groups where you give and take, and there's a tremendous amount of that. And that's really one of the reasons why members love being a part of Selected. So we've always been limited. And so now you add in the acquisitions, and it really becomes challenging because it's, we started, you know, much further back. Our focus is on those who are here, and those independents that ought to be here. That's our focus. And we've really had to work hard, very purposefully, to say we can't worry about those that have moved on, because frankly, you know, that's their choice.
No pun intended. No pun intended.
Let's not get started. Let's not get started on that, because
I love a good funeral joke, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you own a business, hey, that's one of the benefits of owning a business, is that you can make a decision to sell it. Good for you. But we can't get held back, and we can't get caught up in that. And I've had to really work hard with the staff to say, you can't take it personally, you know. even though that firm has been here 50, 60, 80 plus years, you got to move on. So yeah, we're leaning into the whole independent thing. And frankly, there's a lot of benefits of being an independent business. And so, you know, if you're an independent business and your interest is not only learning, but teaching, and you want to get in with this type of a group, well, then this is where you ought to be. And that's where we're focused. And that's really where we excel. And it's challenging, but it is indeed where we have to be.
Because you're right, this is so much more than just the dues dollars, the membership.
Oh, absolutely.
It's representation, it's identity. And I wonder, is there a service model opportunity? I mean, if these members of yours who may have been with you very long time, been loyal association members, decide that path is right for them, for their family, for their business, is there an opportunity for you to provide information or consultation to help them go down that path correctly? I mean, is there a way to monetize their choice or serve them as a member in that choice? And I guess that's for either of you. If there's business solutions for someone being approached by private equity, or so, I know that succession is a service that a lot of associations try to help prepare their members for and deal with, being unbiased as to whatever the outcome may be.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's it seems like an odd move for us, but you know, several years ago we created a platform where members who were interested in selling their business could list their business for other members to consider.
Yeah,
so it's
at least keep it within the
yeah, like, hey, and this is it. You know, we encourage our members, if you're looking to grow, we'll try to identify other independents, whether they're members or not, and try to help you broker that deal. We work with a number of consultants and companies that really focus on that and create valuation opportunities. And so yeah, we're always trying to educate, teach about proper succession planning. I mean, you were joking about the funeral. This is a business that there's not a lot of people who retire, right? So families are in the funeral business and they will continue to work in that funeral business until they sell the business, right? Yeah. And so you would think that succession planning would just be automatic, but sadly it is not. And so we do a lot of work to teach about proper succession planning, whether it's to a family member or a key employee or somebody else, right? Even though sometimes that means we're going to lose that member, that's why they're here, and so that's a benefit. That's an opportunity for us to help them.
Yeah,
it's inevitable. You have to help prepare your members. Consolidation is inevitable, so you have to do what you can to help them do it right.
Right, and I'm sure it's obviously more complex in the M&A world, for banking, but maybe is the big elephant in the room here private equity? And why won't they then join? They're just a different ownership model. Why does the association space not appeal to them? Is it just pure dollars and cents and margins? I mean, there has to be something that we as associations do that is valuable to them. Why is them owning the company then the end of that membership?
I think it depends on the industry. Banks have so many different regulatory requirements that private equity isn't quite as prevalent. I mean, you see it in association technology sphere. It's huge. Private equity is all over the place on that right now.
On healthcare, I mean, every industry I'm working with, whether it's chiropractic, whether it's dental, whether it's senior living, I mean, it's every type of industry is feeling this buyout. And I just wonder why that has to be a bad thing, why that ownership type doesn't value membership or the trade association community the way that any business is encouraged to. They're a business too, right?
They are. And I can't speak for them to say whether or not they would be interested, but I can tell you in my conversations with those former members who are now part of these private equity groups, one of the benefits of a private equity ownership model is they're they're bringing resources together, right?
Got each other. Yeah.
They've got it, and that's so it's not that they are opposed to being a part of a membership organization or there's a lot of associations within funeral service that corporates and private equity owned firms are part of. It doesn't fit with our model because in the end we say, well, who's making the final decision about that business? And it's not an owner, it's a board of investors who have an interest in a bottom line return, which makes total sense. I get that, but it is not an independently owned, whether that's a family ownership, 30%, however that ownership is structured. At the end of the day, the decisions being made about that business are in fact being made by a board of investors.
Yeah.
So doesn't fit for us, not that it's bad, but it just doesn't fit.
Different model.
Yeah. And it's a great point you make about how these ownership groups or any chain, really, I mean, they are a network within themselves. It'd be interesting to know how many of the large chains, whether it's a McDonald's or a 7-Eleven or a Subway, are still members of their industry association, which I would argue is probably for different purposes than best practicing. On your side, I mean, you guys have large brands under your umbrella, Leanne, and are they participating? Are they getting something from you?
Sure, absolutely. And I think you're exactly right. The larger organizations, whether private equity or not, don't often see as much of a need or different needs from their association and trades. They may not need discounts on certain things. They may not need, for example, a larger bank might have its own in-house training modules for its staff. They don't need our training as much. They've built their own internal program, but they definitely want to be members. We have lobbying, we have committees. They want to be involved in the progress of the association and the impact that the association has. So their motives for joining are different, but absolutely everyone has a different motive for joining. But private equity may not see, like Rob, I would not ever try to speak for them, but they may not see the value to them in some associations just from their perspective of what am I getting for this membership. They may not realize what they could benefit from right away. I think you need to look at the impact of that consolidation on not just dues. You were talking about dues and membership and things. You have to do a study and look at it across the whole association. So the impact on your chapters, if you have chapters, the impact on the industry, its voice, does that voice change? The impact on your individual members, are they feeling differently about it? Competing associations, there are a lot of banking associations out there that we compete with. So how does your competition change? And then internally, your dues revenue, your non-dues revenue, all those sorts of things.
Right. You're not just losing dues, you're losing customers for all the other things that you host, you
possibly, yeah, but
yeah.
You might choose to focus on members you didn't have before, maybe smaller members that you could bring in at a special dues rate, because now you're getting maybe more non-dues revenue out of them. You're getting more participation on your committees or volunteers. You might be getting more advocacy help, more grassroots help from those people. So you need to look at your model and figure out, or is there a group we could be reaching out to a little more to compensate for the fact that we might be losing on the other end?
So you guys, I mean, you knew that you were losing a bank a day. You now know that it's a 3 to 4% decline each year. Have you done any of those studies? Is there a monetary number that maybe not each merger is equal or each closure or consolidation is equal, but have you created an equation for how much more revenue you need to find in other places because the dues isn't there or that financial impact isn't there from each member lost?
Not so much on the dues side. We did have a task force a number of years ago to look at consolidation in the industry and the impact, as I said, on the association across the whole spectrum, advocacy, everything. It's not so much on the dues side. When two of our members merge, our due schedule's regressive, so we do lose some revenue. If you have $2 billion banks merge, the dues revenue of a $2 billion bank is a bit lower. So we acknowledge that each year. We factor that in based on projections of which banks are going to merge, how many banks are going to merge, are they members or not. So we do look at that. The impact on the dues isn't tremendously significant each year. So we don't base anything specifically on that. We did choose to look at other aspects of it, non-dues revenue, as I said, advocacy, grassroots, things like that. And we did, not specifically for that reason, but we did focus for a little bit on smaller banks that we didn't have as deep penetration with, and bringing a number of them in for all those other reasons, getting them in at a lower rate and getting them involved. They save a lot of money on our programs and services. We get them more engaged and they grow. So our dues is based on assets. So in any given year, you're going to have some losses due to merger activity, but you're going to have gains in as each bank gets bigger. In a good year, if the banks generally increase in their size, your dues is going to go up anyway.
Right. So there's a silver lining here, that the people that remain under your tent are those who maybe more so want to be there, want to be different from, or to Rob's world, independent from those others, and that I don't know, I want to find silver linings here, and maybe association consolidation is the same. Are the associations also contracting to serve an evolving industry differently, or as membership declines, they have to come together? Are you seeing consolidation in your space, Rob?
Yeah, I suspect we're going to see, amongst my colleagues, I'm hearing way more chatter about consolidation and mergers and partnerships that you would have never heard of before, right? Than I've heard in the past. So I've got to think that we're going to see that, and that's just a natural part of the especially in professions like Leanne was saying. She's a lot of associations. We have a ton of associations, and funeral service is not that big. It's 19,000 units in North America for funeral homes. That's not that big, but yet there's a lot of different associations, and many of these groups have been around for 100+ years. Yeah. And then every state has their own associations, et cetera. So yeah, I got to think that whether it's within the funeral service space or maybe banking or other trades, that you're going to see more associations having to start to figure out how to work with each other to consolidate. Who knows? Maybe private equity wants to get involved in association. I mean, they're in the NFL now, right? I heard
they're everywhere.
Told me that there's private equity buying up AMCs.
Yeah.
They're always looking for something profitable, and say what you will about funeral service. There's expectations, obviously, that the death rate will continue to grow, especially for baby boomers.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're in it. That's why they're in there. They're like, hey, this looks like
your industry is never not going to be needed.
True. That's a model I saw. I was intrigued by when I started looking into it. There are a number of national associations for banks. There are a number of state associations for banks. A bank can belong to 2 or 3 state associations and a couple national. So it's crunching. Nobody can belong to all of those. So we do see some of the state associations consolidating. And you may have a state where there's only 15 banks headquartered in the state completely. There are others that operate in it, but headquartered in there's not that many. One of the things I saw was there are some very small associations, and Rob, you may have even more of this, where you've got very, very tiny associations out there that want to survive. I had read about kind of an AMC model where the National Association kind of acts as a de facto AMC for those smaller chapters in order to help them survive. It may not be a legal affiliation. You're not set up as a federation or anything like that, but you do provide them some basic services, operational stuff that they may have trouble doing on their own, and it helps build that relationship up with your state chapters and keep you as in the forefront of their relationship with the bankers in their state.
Sure. And while there's a service motivation for that, I think it's also a revenue stream. Mm-hmm. I know of multiple clients who have been doing either that for a long time or have started offering those type of membership, really management, administrative services. Yep. I mean, I know some nationals who are going out and doing strategic planning and doing succession, doing all the kind of support pieces that maybe some of the smaller chapters cannot. There's an economy of scale in what associations do, and not only for each other, for themselves, but then for the membership. We're here at almost the middle of the decade. What do you each in your industries and in your membership project for the remainder of the decade? You mentioned, Leanne, you had a subcommittee. Did they say they didn't solve this problem? Like, what was the answer?
We had an internal task force. It was years ago. It was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. They came up with some solid recommendations for things that the association could do. Most of it was getting our arms around the problem. So as I said, really digging deep and saying, what would be the impact from an advocacy perspective? What would be the impact on our chapters? And just identifying it and saying, are there things we can do to help that? And the impact might be nothing really. Maybe we don't anticipate it changing anything dramatically about how we operate from a regulatory perspective. So it's not quite as bad. I think in our case in particular, things like succession planning, the drivers of consolidation were something we chose to address. Cybersecurity, fraud, compliance regulations. Some banks are closing simply because they can't absorb the cost of compliance any longer. So resources in those areas can help those banks survive. That's the kind of thing, less about the association, more about how do we help our members, that we found from the task force were recommendations that we could make to help them either survive or go out on their own terms if they choose to sell, not because they felt forced into it because the grandson didn't want to take over the family business, or that compliance costs were too high, automation, things like that. So we looked at some of the drivers that we could impact from a products and services perspective.
I mean, I guess that's the bottom line, is how can we help our members stay strong, stay in business, and you're right, do it on their terms. And I think this even applies more so to you and your membership, Rob. What's the projection for the next 5 years or so, and how do you guys plan? How does Selected plan to be a positive force in this?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of very small funeral homes, family-run funeral homes. They're kind of in the heart of their communities, and they play a really important role in the lives of families and those around them. But it's hard to keep that going. So I suspect we will see a lot more consolidation of the smaller firms coming together. Our hope is that they will continue to remain independent, and that creates opportunities for us. Oddly enough, I feel like funeral service is just one of those things that consumers prefer working with an independent firm, whether it's a family-run business or otherwise. I mean, the fact that when these purchases are made, whether it's by a corporation or private equity, the fact that they don't change the name on the funeral home, and in many cases
isn't that what they're buying? I mean, they're buying the name, they're buying the relationship,
and they keep the family. Like, hey, we're going to give you a lot of money, but you need to stay here for the next 2 to 3 years because we don't want the community to think that it's some chain or some, right? So I feel like while it's challenging and it's a lot going on, and it's certainly had a big impact on us, I still believe, and I think many within the profession believe, that independent ownership is always going to be the majority within funeral service. And so I look at that and say, well, then we've got opportunities here. We just need to work harder at being able to bring these firms in. And we rely heavily on our current membership to spread the word and bring others in, because you have to be brought in by a current member anyway to join our group. And so I feel like our niche is still of great value and great opportunity for us.
We've talked about these as industries and sectors, but you're right, Rob, they really are professions. And I wonder if if the pendulum is going to swing. I've heard from both in the engineering sector, in the medical and surgical sector, those coming up in the professions don't want to go work for those type of entities because there isn't that holistic care for the profession. They know they're just a number on a financial spreadsheet. And so I wonder if there is, you guys have talked about kind of highs and lows at different times. Is there a larger context where there may be pushback either internally or externally from this type of consolidation?
I think in certain industries you might see it. I remember I did some research on pharmacy deserts and the pharmacy industry, and there seemed to be a growing concern about pharmacy deserts, and a lot of pharmacists didn't want to work for some of the big chains, as you said. But I think that industry is really cyclical in terms of the number of pharmacists that graduate and come out and go in and out of the industry. I think in those things, maybe like bookstores, you're going to see a little resurgence. With banks, it's really difficult. We only see maybe I used to see 150 new banks every year. Now there might be 1, 2, 3. That's a regulatory issue. That's an issue where it's just so tough for a new bank to create itself to open up these days. So I don't see it changing a ton for banking, but in other industries, yeah, I think there might be a grassroots effort to bring back local shopping, local things like that. I mean, just look at the backlash Amazon is having with the Washington Post stuff. So that people are saying, oh, we should shop locally more. We should go and shop at our local places. I think you might see more of that in the future, but can't be sure.
Right. We rarely hear a good story about, that big conglomerate or that big chain or that private equity merger. It doesn't usually bring about, happy testimonials.
Right. True.
Well, I am so thankful to both of you for coming and helping me just scratch the surface of this very, very complex topic. I'm again sorry Andrew could not join us. I'd love to know how this is impacting the UK market and other spaces around the world. And it just demonstrates to me how many more layers than just a membership headcount or a dues number this has the potential to impact. And also the service and the sentiment that you both have expressed, that it still comes down to serving our members in the best way possible, helping them do their business. And that's why I'm in the association space. It's why you're in the association space, and why I really believe in this sector, and want to thank both of you for visiting and chatting. First time guests, welcome to the association family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To have you both, and encourage us all to pay attention to this topic and start thinking about how maybe we're never going to get ahead of it, but to Leanne's point, hopefully we can start addressing it with some data and with some pilots or experiments or attempts to serve our members in our professions and industries a little differently. Last thoughts, Rob?
No, it's been a pleasure, and you're right. We're just kind of scratching the surface, but I got to keep focusing on the opportunities, and as you say, focus on those who are here, and that'll be the best part of what we can do, right?
There you go, Leanne. Last thoughts?
For banking, this is a kind of unique problem because most countries don't have more than 4 or 5 banks in the whole country. We have 4,500. I mean, it's a unique problem for us in the US, but we are committed to supporting members of all sizes, no matter what path they take.
Well, again, thank you both. You're expert in your fields, and thank you for your ongoing service to your members. Until next time, put your members and your mission first.